Welcome to the Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science. This seminar is in English with interpretation available in Spanish and French. Kindly select the language of your preference in the subbar menu. This seminar is being recorded and made available on the CIMIT YouTube channel. You are invited to submit your questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today to be addressed in the open Q&A session right after the conversation. We are hearing today from Simone Staiger, a Senior Knowledge Manager and Program Coordinator for the CGIAR Multifunctional Landscapes Science Program. Simone Staiger will have a conversation with Nayan Bakali, CIMIT's External Communication Manager at CIMIT, where he helps bring to the organization science impact and partnership to life for global audiences. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Bram Govaerts, Director General of CIMIT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker of today. Dr. Govaerts, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to Catalyst of Change, a space where we bring forward the voices shaping the future of food systems, science, and innovation. This series is about more than inclusion or ideas. It's about the people who are transforming how knowledge becomes action, how data informs decisions, and how science delivers impact at scale. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Simone Staiger-Rivas. Simone is a Senior Knowledge Manager and Program Coordinator for the CGIAR's Multifunctional Landscapes Science Program. She's bringing more than 25 years of experience across the CGIAR system, including work at system level. Trained as a communication specialist, Simone has built a career that goes far beyond communications, focusing on how to design systems that enable collaboration, learning, and impact across complex transdisciplinary initiatives. Her work consistently bridges science, people, and partnerships, ensuring that knowledge does not remain siloed, but becomes a driver of meaningful change. Since joining the Alliance of Bioversity International and CIAT in 2001, she has held multiple leadership roles. Currently, through her role in the Multifunctional Landscape Science Program, Simone advances collaboration across the centers, drives actors and disciplines, and connecting data, local knowledge, and global research to support more integrated and sustainable approaches to food systems and natural resource management. At CIMIT, of course, we share this vision. As we work to build resilient, inclusive, and sustainable food systems, we know that transforming agriculture is not only about scientific breakthroughs. It is also about how we connect knowledge, strengthen learning systems, and enable collaboration at scale. Today, Simone is joined by Nayan Bakali, External Communications Manager at CIMIT, where he helps bring the organization's science, impact, and partnerships to life for global audiences. With more than 15 years of experience across 8 countries, including over a decade in communications and external relations, he brings a strong blend of strategic thinking and handsome storytelling. He previously spent 5 years with the United Nations in Latin America and Europe, supporting international cooperation and global development agendas. Simone, Nayan, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to Catalyst of Change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bram. Simone, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Thank you, Bram, for introducing me. I saw you grow over the years at CIMIT, and it is a real privilege to be introduced by you. I was also very honored that Jenny thought about proposing me to speak to this event. I have been more in the background over the past years, but I do know that for many, I left some marks in the past, but with regards to participation and inclusion. So I will divide my talk into 4 pieces. I will talk a little bit more about myself, and then I will give you 3 examples where I think we made a difference in terms of institutional participatory processes. And I want to look forward and see where we are now and where we should be going, or perhaps you have better ideas and more ideas on where we should be going with inclusive participatory processes at the organizational institutional level. So to talk a bit about myself, I want to insist in three turning points in my career that have to do with inclusion. So I was, the first turning point is really related to my childhood. I was brought up in Germany in a tiny village. My father was the doctor of the village. And I was brought up in a very well-educated family where inclusive conversations were at the dinner table every day. But I was also brought up in a family where there was no expectation for women to have a career. It was a possibility, but not an expectation. And this changed a lot for me when I moved to France after I finished secondary school. So I was in love with France. I was in love with the French. I wanted to live in France. And I moved there, obviously, to study, but I did not really have myself expectations on what my future would be. And going to France and be surrounded by French young women who had a totally different cultural background than myself and who were absolutely determined to have children and work and have a career and have it all, made me realize that this is not only a possibility, but that I should attempt to have a professional career. So when I was 26, I was a project leader in an innovation department of a telecommunications organization in Paris. And I would have never thought I could come that far when I was a child. My second turning point was quite later when I already had moved to Colombia with my Colombian husband. We had a first child. I had worked for 5-6 years in the public-private sector in Paris, as I said. And I wanted to have a break. I wanted to have another child. I found later in 2001, so 25 years ago, the job at CIAT. And we realized that our eldest son had a cognitive disability. I am the carrier of that disability, and today I have 3 sons, 2 have the disability and 1 does not. And at that point, so I would say around 2004, when I knew that both of my children, the eldest and the youngest one, had this disability, the career became really a life-saving moment. I went into my work with such a determination and such a fearlessness and excitement to complement my life at home with work and with a career, that it was a most vibrant moment of what I did over the last 25 years. So this obviously brings to me a very particular perspective to inclusion, having 2 boys who have special needs. And then my third turning point is not so much related to inclusion. I just wanted to mention it to make clear of where I'm standing now and what my perspective is now. So around 8 years ago, I was a team leader on monitoring, evaluation, and learning and other knowledge management issues in the Alliance. And I really felt like I had a burnout related to work. I thought I had given it everything I had in me to the organization. And I was, and it was the moment actually when the alliance was formed between CIAT and Bioversity. And I had difficulties with that alliance, not because I didn't like it, but the idea, but I felt really profoundly that stuff needed more time to digest the alliance, and that more dialogue was needed. And I felt that this was not on the agenda. I talked openly about it, and I decided to move away from team leadership and institutional responsibilities and I went to work in a very big bilateral project, and I did what I think I knew I can do and what I want to relearn, which is communications monitoring and evaluation and knowledge management. I did that in the bilateral program, and then I did that in the agroecology initiative. I loved this job. I love to be close to partners, to be much closer to scientists, and to bring people together for a common goal. So this is where I stand now. I'm the coordinator of this multifunctional landscape science program. And I will talk about 3 examples from the past. They are not recent, but I think the topics are very relevant. And I want to think about with you how these innovations from that time played out over time and where we are now, and how we have progressed or perhaps regressed or changed our point of view on these topics. So my first example is about stakeholder and partner engagement. My second example is about communications, specifically social media. And my third example is about facilitation, a facilitation of meetings, conferences, online face-to-face, in view of inclusion and joint participatory decision-making. So in the first example, I need to tell a story to set a little bit the scene. I was, that must have been around 2000, let's say 3 or 4. And I was charged by CGIAR Secretariat, which was at that time in Washington, and we had a project together on knowledge sharing. I was charged to go to a meeting in Peru where the discussion was about a stakeholder and partner engagement process. When I came into the room, I arrived late. I must have had some delays at the airport, but I arrived late, and I felt a dynamic in the room where the wild older male chair of this meeting was quite dominant. And I felt that specifically the perspective of an African woman who was representing, I guess, a civil society organization was not really heard. So we were not a big team, right? We were 11 participants in that meeting. So I intuitively took my computer and connected it to the screen, and I started to take notes of what people said in that meeting. That was not at all my role. It was not planned. But it totally changed the dynamic of the meeting, because people were looking at the notes, and every time a decision was taken, what everybody had said was projected and had to be taken into account somehow, right? In that same meeting, there was a young Canadian lady who was there to actually take notes and do a report. So that was long before AI. She did that very consciously. But I had a side conversation with her, and I said, "Do you know why you are here?" And she said, "Well, I'm here to take notes and do the report." And I said, "Well, I think you are here for more of that. You're here to make sure that in this report, all the voices are reflected." And I talked to her about the dynamics I had observed, and I received a letter from her, I guess, at least 15 years later, and a letter, really a letter, not an email. And she said how important that conversation had been for her, and that she actually, that was really a grain of influence on the changes into her career that she did over the years, from an editor to a much more proactive contributor to participation and inclusion. So I think that today, in terms of stakeholder participation, partner inclusion, we have obviously progressed enormously. But I also think that probably because there are just so many opportunities for engagement, and there is an overload of opportunities. There are some things we could do better. So I thought about three things. I think that we are still too much designing stakeholder engagement processes for the stakeholders and not with the stakeholders. So when we talk about co-design and co-creation in research, we should do more of it at the institutional level. I think, for example, it would be fantastic, and I know Nayan is listening, it would be fantastic if we had really joint communications strategies with stakeholders, with partners, and let them lead and not have these two parallel streams of diffusion of information from the partner on the one side and from us on the other. And I'm sure there are many examples that show that we are doing this, but I don't see it as a real trend. And then something I care a lot about, because we did that in the bilateral with NASA and USAID on geospatial information for the Amazon, is to actually really monitor if our partners get out of that collaboration and engagement what they are looking for. So I think we engage, but we don't monitor and we don't check with the partners enough if they are happy with the collaboration, with the engagement, with the participation. So that was my first example. I hope I'm okay in time. My second example is more about, I said, communication and specifically social media. So I don't know how many of you were working in the early 2000s, but when around 2005, CGIAR got funds to explore the world of knowledge sharing and created the ICT KM program that Enrica Pocardi led with a lot of courage and strength and surrounded us around that common goal of collaboration and inclusion. It was, I cannot describe how vibrant that moment was. If it was FAO, CGIAR, IFAD, all these organizations where we were in a fury of exploration, of online collaboration, of blogs, of wikis, of photo sharing, of social bookmarking, of all these tools and possibilities that the internet gave us. And what I find really funny when I look at our situation now is we just didn't care about any institutional policies. We just opened wikis. We just opened Google Docs. We just did it, right? We created our own URLs for our sites. And we wrote our blogs from our personal perspective. We did not fear to say, me, I'm in this meeting, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. So it was an extraordinary time. So what I do think where we are now is we are obviously in a moment of total social media overload. And what we hoped to be possible in terms of participation online has become just a sea of things that we cannot control and that we cannot understand. It is very difficult to create channels, feedback channels, and real conversations online. I am observing for many years now that the trend is to have online presence for fundraising. So the people I see online are Ishmahan or Bram everywhere, in Davos, in the world, in these conferences, which is probably really, really important. I know it is important. It is, but what we try to do at that time and make invisible people visible has, I think, regressed. And I hope, I don't see it, but I hope that the communications professionals in CGIAR think about what alternatives are and what pathways for inclusion through communications should be or can be. So that's something I really would like to discuss. I think it's an absolute exciting topic, and I just don't see it happening. So I would really like to hear more about if something is happening. And this does not mean that I don't see a lot of innovations in the way we create micro content and we push out what we do, but I don't see real two-way communication online. So my last example is about facilitation, and that is what Jenny mentioned to me when she asked me if I wanted to speak at this event, because I did a facilitation training at CIMIT, and that's also already quite a while ago. So, and that was really how my career at CGIAR, if you want, started. An anecdote I want to share is that we got a grant from Canada to work on knowledge sharing, and we had an offer to propose concept notes for innovating and for trying out new things. And I had been in the organization for not for a long time, but I had followed Science Week at the Alliance, and I found it terribly boring. I saw these people come from all over the world, and they did only the PowerPoint presentations, and there was no really a lot of opportunities to interact and communicate. So that's all old stories. But at that time, I just wanted to tell you that I had this idea, I wrote the concept note, it got selected, and we got a consultant support to design a totally different Science Week. That all happened over the holidays of the science director. And when he came back, he found on his desk that news that we will do a different Science Week. And that is also due to the openness of our then director, Joachim Voss, who unfortunately passed away 2 weeks ago, and who encouraged us, and specifically young people, so much to speak up and share ideas. And that was an immense enabling environment at that time. So at the end, we did a totally different Science Week, and that idea emerged simultaneously, I think, at ILRI, and then it just went like as a wave through the CGIAR centers, and obviously nowadays most of the important meetings are facilitated. We have made a lot of progress in that area. So what I think where we are today is, this is definitely the area where I see most progress, but I also see that we lost a bit the energy, for one, to do a good documentation of these fast and online documentation. Now we have AI, but how do we make sure that we actually get most out of these meetings and the follow-up that is needed? I do think that we do a lot of facilitation, but we forget that you do facilitation to actually achieve participatory decision-making. So the inclusion aspect in facilitation is that you want people to discuss, to grow, to go through difficult moments where you confront different cultures, different point of views, and you want to reach a point where you can agree on a way forward. And this is something we don't do enough. We facilitate for facilitation purposes, but we don't facilitate for participatory decision-making. And that's, I think, where I would stop for now.
Thank you very much, Simone. This is a very reflection, and also we have to think for ourselves. And Ayan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Isa and Simon. I truly love your presentation. It was incredibly inspiring, and I fully agree with you on the joint communications, joint engagement between partners and stakeholders. As an external communications manager, I know you work at the intersection of global science, equity, and impact, and that your experience gives you a clear view of whose voices are heard, which ones are still missing, and why inclusion really matters. So I would love to explore some of that with you through a few questions. So the first one is, when did equity and inclusion stop become something personal in your work?
Yeah, that happened very early when I joined CIAT. That was, I said, 25 years ago. I was asked to build the first website of the organization. So you might laugh at that. But so what did I do? I mean, that was really a time where you had 10 emails per day in your inbox, right? It was very, very at the beginning of online a collaboration or communication at all. Most of the directors still ask the secretaries to print out their emails. So it's a long time ago. But what I did intuitively is to say, okay, I cannot do this alone. I wrote to the webmasters of other centers. I asked, what are you doing? You must be at the same moment of trying to put together a website. And then I went to see the research directors and I said, listen, I know you don't have time, but let me work with your secretary, a research assistant, somebody, and give me a focal point for the website, and I will work with them to build the content and to make sure it is updated. So that became the CIAT web network. And it was the first real attempt in the organization to build a community of practice inside the organization. And I did that very intuitively. I did not, it was a great moment. And I think that today that participation, I mean, not in terms of the web network, but participation in the organization is becoming increasingly difficult because we are all so busy and we are all so under pressure to deliver fast. And if you want to do true participation, you need time, not only to hear other people's voices, but to make something out of it, right? To cook the recipe that makes people thrive and buy in. And we are too rushed to do to go through truly participatory processes.
Wow. And from where you sit in global science, who gets heard most easily and who is still struggling to be heard?
Yeah, so let me just look at my notes 1 second. Yeah, so I want to go back to that topic of having too much noise. We don't know how to canalize our messages and our voices. And it's becoming a dialogue des sourds, how they say in French, right? It's a dialogue where we are deaf and we cannot listen because we're only speaking. And my regret is that the people, as I said, who are mostly heard are the directors now. I hear the top-notch communication. I see communications teams focused on making Ismahan visible, which is truly, truly crucial and important, right? But the connection between the on-the-ground project communication with partners and the top communication, I don't see the blurred boundaries that are necessary to do a bottom-up approach. So I miss that. And let me see, there was another point I wanted to make. Yeah, I think, as I said, and I will say that I think again in another moment, I think a true innovation would be if we do communication strategies with partners, but partners leading it. and not having us talking and them talking. If you go to Facebook, or because partners still use Facebook a lot, right? If you go to Facebook, they talk about what they do with us and we replicate, but it's not based on a joint common approach. I think we need to move more towards our partners, and we need to focus on partners. We need to show how we work together, how we try to work towards their empowerment, to their solutions, and to their scaling. And we are too egocentric.
And something in line of what you've said. So, what actually goes wrong when certain voices or types of knowledge are missing from our work in research for impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will come with two old examples again. Sorry, I'm turning 60, so I'm part of those who give old examples from the past. But one of the first conversations I had with Jackie Ashby, who was a pioneer in participatory research in CGIAR, I asked her exactly that question. And she said, well, do you know why we talk only about cows when we talk about livestock? At that time, this has changed. Well, it's because men are deciding on the research agendas, and they are excited about big animals. They are not thinking about the smaller animals who live around the farm house and which the wife is taking care of, right? So that's a typical example of what happens if you don't hear all the voices. A second example is about this famous cassava peeler that scientists and I don't know, people invented, and they were very excited because it was a very effective way of gaining time in peeling cassava. But they forgot that in the village, it was the women who peeled the cassava, and then they would run out of a job, right? So I think that's two examples. What I think that is that today there are truly many, many voices at the table. But we don't, that's what I said before. We hear a lot of voices, but we don't really incorporate it enough into our decision-making processes to develop joint strategies and action plans.
Thank you, Simone. Can you share with us one moment where bringing in different perspectives genuinely changed the outcome of a project?
Yeah. So I will take for now, not an old example, but an example from where I am now. And it's perhaps a weird example, but I think it's a great example. Look at who is our multifunctional program science director. It's Lulzaget Desta from Ethiopia, who has an extraordinary career and life story. Having him as a program director brings in totally new perspectives to a program like others. And it is a privilege to struggle with the adaptation of us as a team to him as a director. It obliges us to challenges what we used to do or how we used to think about things. I think it's extraordinary. And yeah, I think that's the example I would mention.
Thank you, Simone. And my last question, if global science truly embraced equity and inclusion, what would look different 5 years from now, from your perspective?
Yeah. So you gave me that question before. So I have four things. I noted them down, and thank you for giving me the time to think about that question. I think what I said, we would join partner spaces much more instead of creating our own spaces. I'm sure it's happening, but it's not happening enough. I think the decolonization discussion has not truly been embraced in CGIAR, and it should be. Then I would like that in 5 years we have found an alternative to social media and to online conversations that are not happening anymore, really. So new forms of dialogue. And I think it's urgent that CGIAR Communications thinks about this. I think I would like to see much more fluid connection, as I said, between what's going in the field, what is going on with our partnerships, and what is going on in the CGIAR. And on a personal note, as I said, I have 2 children with, they are not children anymore, they are big boys, with disability. And I dream about a space where we have more people with disability in our organization. When I was a team leader, I managed to hire with view of diversity, but not, I said my next objective is to have somebody in a wheelchair in my team. And that CIAT needs to have a bus where this person can get into the bus, right? And whatever. I mean, the inclusion in the workspace for disabled people, I think, would be a great thing to see in 5 years.
Thank you very much, Simone, for this fruitful conversation. I really enjoyed it. And over to you, Isa.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you very much, Nayan, for having this inspiring conversation with Simone. Now, I'm sorry. Now we invite the audience to participate in the upcoming open Q&A session. Be ready to raise your hand, open your micro and your camera. Also, you are invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. So we have already received one question in the Slido tool. Simone, do you take inspiration in your work from any other organizations or systems?
Of course, I do. I can give a recent example. I stumbled upon that in social media. So one of the big questions we have in the landscape program is, how do we work at a landscape scale? How do we go away from the farm, not only to the village, but to the landscape? And landscapes can be huge, right? It can be ecoregions. We are thinking about, how can I work on a scale that covers the Andes and that goes right down to the Amazon in Latin America. And I see organizations like WRI, 1000 Landscapes, or World Conservation Society, thinking about the same things. And I'm looking into understanding more how they do this. So I'm not talking here about an example of participation and inclusion, but I do follow what is going on. Equally, the whole discussion about fertilizers due to the crisis in Iran and the overall world crisis. We need to be aware of these things and react fast, right? So I was really proud of myself telling my director, we need to look into this right at the beginning, because I was just following online conversations. I don't know if I'm replying to the question. That's what came to my mind.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you talk about a time where you were faced with a major challenge in your career, and how you handled it, and how you grew from that experience?
Well, that's a bit the turning points I mentioned at the beginning. So let me take the last example with the burnout that might happen to many of us, right? To have a moment in your career when you say, I just can't deal with it anymore. It's too much, or I'm too stressed out, right? The stress is not leading to creativity anymore, but really to exhaustion. So what and because of my personal situation with my children, and also really for my need to have a life work balance that works, I decided to step down from team leadership. I said I need to go back to the source. I don't care if it's less visible, if it's it's in career terms, it is not progressing in the career. So I decided to stay in Colombia, to stay with the Alliance, but to look for opportunities that provide me with an environment where I'm less under stress. And I talked about it openly to colleagues. And I jumped on this opportunity of the bilateral program with NASA and Sevilla, and I had an incredible time. It was doing again a website, doing again social media, doing again meeting facilitation, doing again working in a team with partners. I mean, I had so much fun working with the hub partners and their communicators, trying to create a dynamic. So I think the way I got out of it is step back and find what is important to make everything work in harmony, life and family and work.
Yeah, thank you, Simone. From your experience, what facilitation strategies have proven most effective in fostering meaningful participation and engagement? Please share some examples.
Okay, so I was so privileged to do this facilitation training with Sam Kainer many years ago, and then developed just initially for CIAT Alliance purposes a known facilitation training. And the one thing that I most apply is that when you start to think about a meeting or an event that needs to be facilitated, is to think obviously about the objective, to know how many people, online, face-to-face, and all these things, but to structure the overall objective into smaller objectives. And these smaller objectives should build the building blocks of your agenda. And then for each of these objectives, you design a sub-agenda. How do I start this sub-objectives? What is the participatory process that most is aligned, is suitable to reach the to reach our goal for this sub-segment? And so you build like a Lego, you build an overall agenda, but being conscious about each moment of that meeting. And obviously you need to give yourself enough time, not rushed, not doing an agenda that is overloaded, and be very, very clear of what you want to get out of it and what are the follow actions that that you need, so that when you look back, that the meeting actually really made a difference, or that you have all the input that you need to move forward and represent the group agreements that you have reached.
Thank you, Simone. We have questions now. So how can we intentionally create spaces for meaningful participation when everyone is so busy and often mentally overloaded?
Oh, I'm in the same situation. I'm now, and I forgot to say that at some point, I'm now not fighting so much for participation anymore. I don't have the energy. People don't have the energy. So one thing is that we need to work really, really in small teams, one-on-one, really small groups to advance pieces of the pie, and avoid to have these big meetings or these medium meetings where you have participants who are not listening because they are doing emails at the same time, right? So have the right people at the table. Tell me the question again. Meaningful spaces for participation when everybody is so busy.
Yes.
I think it would be helpful, and we struggle with this right now in the program, to have some clear principles and some clear processes that lead us to decisions. These programs are huge. It's a lot of money. It's more than 100 researchers in a program like this. And all these partners So empowering teams in the countries, for example, is really important, and really not trying to dominate the discussions from the program management unit perspective. So delegate, meet in smaller teams, let people discuss really what is meaningful to them and not drag them into discussions they don't really want to be part of. And again, my point of trying to be more in partner spaces and not create more and more space CGIAR or CIMED or CIAT spaces.
Thank you so much. What advice do you have for CIMIT and other CGE centers for achieving true shifts in organization culture where equity and inclusion are centered?
I struggled to hear the first part. What do you?
Oh, yes, sorry. Let me go back. Just 1 second, please. Okay, here. What advice do you have for CIMIT and other CG centers for achieving true shifts in organizational culture where equity and inclusion are centered?
Well, first of all, I think we have achieved a lot. So from where I started to now, we have achieved a lot. I do think we have achieved a lot in terms of gender equity in our institutional roles and positions. I think we do need to do more to shift to more geographically equitable representation in our leadership, but we are doing a lot. My main point is again and again, it's not about us, it's about who we work with. And this is my equity issue in my mind right now, not in our own institutions. But I must say, and many people don't remember that probably, but we had this gender and diversity program in CGIAR that was absolutely fundamental to achieve the shifts and where we are now. And I don't see any, so we have a people and culture unit, right? But I don't see much of that topic in their work plan, or it's not really for me communicated a lot what the plan is to support more shift, a bigger shift.
Thank you, Simone. We also, CIMIT also has now the social inclusion and gender program. And also in our strategy, we are trying to include this concept in all our projects. So what do you think we should be focusing in order to make it visible and successful?
So one thing I think I miss is Isabel is youth. I think we try to make space for young career researchers. I missed the time where we had these 2 or 3. I mean, the Brahms, right? Brahm, when he started at CIMET, he was, I don't know, he started as an intern or as a young or PhD student, but these moments where we had these people who brought in all these totally new ideas, and I don't see them emerging really. So tell me if I'm wrong, but how can we create a trustful environment for young researchers and a space for new ideas? I mean, when I talked about Joachim Voss, our director at that time, I mean, we were not afraid to say, hey, why don't we do climate change research? I mean, at that time, nobody did climate change research. Or when we started to talk about big data, or when we started to talk about these participatory processes and in research. I mean, I remember I must have been 35, and I took my flip chart and I went to the management team and I reported on some gender world cafe we did to understand how women felt in the organization and what we need to improve. And I mean, I see everything is so now more organized and institutionalized that these improvisations that are creative, I don't see them a lot.
Thank you
I
so
would
much.
encourage to have that yet more, yes.
Yeah. So we are, this is why this is, for example, this seminar is one effort to make us more conscious about it, no?
Mm.
And how we can empower those youth, those young scientists, those women to growth professionally and be successful in their careers and be our leaders and representatives in the field. And also having in mind that we are our final beneficiaries of the products, the science, the technology that these centers are working on are for
Yeah.
the farmers, no? To
Yeah.
take it to the farmer.
There's one thing I was thinking about when I prepared for this talk that I perhaps could mention now as well. Can I, Isabel? Yeah.
Sure.
So I think when we think about how to be more inclusive, we think about how can I be more open, right? How can I make space for the other person? And we really need to think about what that means for the other person. I can give you one example. I feel very much after 30 years and since the beginning actually included in Colombia, right? Colombia has opened its arms to me and I feel very much at home, but I make an effort every day to adapt to Colombian culture, to Latin American culture. I enjoy the openness, but I also really frustrated that I have to control my point of view because in Latin America, you don't say just what you think. We in Germany, we just say what we think very bluntly. And I need to make an effort every day to adapt. So when we open, we cannot just think, oh, we are great, we are open our space for other point of views. It is very, it is very not stressful, but it takes work and effort to adapt, even when you have opened the space for others. And I think this is really important to think about, right? If you have a PhD student from Cameroon in Mexico, what does this mean for this person every day to be there and away from where he comes from or she comes from and the effort that requires? So it's not really, cannot say, oh, I have got this PhD student to Mexico, but it requires a lot more than that.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very good reflection because they are leaving their countries, their culture. They have to learn something new, and also they have to the language and other challenges that they have to face now. So it's very important if we are inviting them to come to the country and do research that we really provide the environment so they can develop their skills. So I would like to invite Nayan for a final question or comment after listening some more of your point of view. Nayan, are you okay?
Thank you, Simone, and thank you, Isa. From the comms perspective, I think communications and storytelling are where equity becomes real. So they shape not only how science is understood, but whose knowledge is valued, remembered, and acted upon. So when we tell stories more inclusively, we don't just broaden audiences, but we strengthen also science itself and its ability to create meaningful impact. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for inviting me to tell my story.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simone. Would you please share with us some words of wisdom for our audience to take away?
Oh my God, I think I did that all the hour long. Yeah, dare to speak out, make your voice heard in the organization, create connections with people. Don't be afraid to talk to the big bosses and come with ideas. I know among scientists, there's a lot of competition and ideas are of high value, but I do encourage all of us to continue to have open conversations and to co-create.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simone, for sharing with us your professional growth. We are really inspired. You are a great speaker. And on behalf of Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMIT, we thank Simone Staiger so much for being here today. Also, we appreciate Nayamba Kali for having this great and stimulating conversation. And we invite the audience to join the upcoming Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science seminar. So have a great day, have a nice evening, and thank you all. Thank you.